We never know where life will lead us or what may hinder us along the way. But while every day can feel like one big question mark, it doesn't have to. With the right insights, strategies, and solutions from Western and Southern Financial Group, together we can look ahead to leave the unknown behind.
We're recording this podcast on Wednesday, June 9th, trying to get ahead of the game here. So if anything breaks between now and the 16th when this podcast does drop, I just want to let you know, we didn't know yet. We did not know yet, but we're excited.
Wait, let's predict what could happen. Jags name Tebow starting tight end.
I like that. Jacksonville Jaguars name Tebow. I know you're a big Tim Tebow fan from the tweets that you sent out and stuff like that. I know you're a big Tim Tebow fan. But we are recording this podcast episode on June 9th.
Just a winner. Just a winner.
Just a winner. This will drop here on June 16th. What we really want to do with this one, man, is look at when we're evaluating offensive players, and we're going to do the defensive players one as well next week. What we look at, I think a lot of people ask us, about the evaluation process and how you get into it and how to start. I think focusing in on the traits and the stats and the things that matter at each position will help, I think, make your process more efficient. I think a lot of people watch full games of players at positions where maybe you could focus more on things and segment your watching out and that type of stuff. But still, I think this is going to be helpful for those who are looking to get more efficient with their process when they are evaluating talent.
Yeah, and these are things that we probably touch on or have touched on before, and we'll touch on, at times when talking about players. But this is trying to put a kind of one pod together to encapsulate all of them. So you have one real spot to go to know how kind of just our take and how our takes are born.
Yep. How our takes are born. Should we change the name of the pod?
Birthed.
Should we change the name of the pod to How Our Takes Are Born? All right, let's go ahead and start with the quarterback position here. And you're going to focus a little bit more on the traits and the aspects of a quarterback's game that you look for. And I'll kind of bring in some of the stats and the advanced stats that we have here at PFF that we kind of hone in on when we are projecting quarterbacks from college to the NFL.
Yes. And so I think the biggest thing you look for, obviously we look for at PFF, is accuracy. That's the starting point of, I think, any quarterback. And it's why, can be super high on Joe Burrow. I think arm strength is very easy to evaluate. Anyone can sort of see a guy throw a football 85 yards and be like, that guy's got a cannon. But I think arm strength is more of a box tick. You got a strong arm, you can hack it in the NFL. You got a weak arm, you got to win other ways. You got to be Joe Burrow from an accuracy perspective. But I think accuracy is kind of the thing that ultimately separates quarterbacks at the NFL level, as the biggest separator. And then from there, decision making. It's why people ask, what's the biggest difference? Because Jordan Love coming out in 2020, Trey Lance coming out in 2021, very similarly skilled from an athleticism, arm strength standpoint. Small schools, what's the difference? Decision making. Jordan Love was throwing the ball the other team left and right that last year at Utah State. Trey Lance was not. That's a big thing. That is, I don't care if you don't have a ton of surrounding talent, you can always control not throwing the ball into the arms of a linebacker that's standing in front of a dig route. And Trey Lance controlled that well. Jordan Love did not. And so I think it's a big thing projecting the NFL. And then poise. Are you comfortable? And poise, I think, encapsulates a lot of the sort of technical, like footwork, how consistent you are with your release, consistent you are with mechanics, and it's like pocket presence. But like poise is just how confident do you play the game of football, and
smooth. I think smooth is part of that as well.
Yeah, and so those are the biggest things I look for at the quarterback position. And I love this sort of analogy, or I don't even know if this is fucking analogy. I'm not sure exactly what analogy means. I should, but I'm not exactly sure. But the Daniel Jeremiah and Bucky Brooks in the Move the Sticks podcast, they talk about shooters versus scorers at the quarterback position. And I, like I said, I love this, how that translates to the quarterback position, where a lot of guys can point and hit an open receiver. Like a lot of guys can do that. Not a lot of guys can, and those are shooters. A lot of guys can, if they're open for three, can shoot, make it. Not a lot of guys can create on their own, whether it's outside the pocket, throwing guys open, that sort of stuff. You want to look more like you want as many scorer traits as possible. Having shooters is great. Like the accuracy, having that is great. But I think the difference is, I don't think there's a big difference physically in what a Baker Mayfield and a Patrick Mahomes can do. Arm talent and like where they can put the football. But Patrick Mahomes can score. Baker Mayfield is more of a shooter.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha. I think some of the things there that stand out to me, and when I was talking to Jedd Fisch, the interview we have at the back end of the podcast, two things he said at the quarterback position he looks for.
Wait, can I just say, do not quote graphic me saying there's not much of a difference between Patrick Mahomes and Baker Mayfield.
I was thinking about that in the back of my head. Right. It's like, I get what you're saying, though. I get what you're saying. In terms of like the gap, you know what I mean?
Like when Baker Mayfield and Patrick Mahomes both have an open guy, I'm not sure that there's not going to be a difference in terms of how they can hit him and the consistency with which they hit him. It's the Baker Mayfield being able to get to that open guy or being able to create that open guy.
It's being able to score. You know, and Patrick Mahomes has that scoring, that scoring to his game.
He scores as well as anyone.
Yeah, absolutely. So when Jedd Fisch talked to me about quarterback position, two things he looked for: decision making, and the number two thing, the ability to make all the throws. And I think this part is key: ability to make all the throws in our offense. And I think you can change that. Obviously, like your offense can have different variety of throws. You look at what the Baltimore Ravens did with Lamar Jackson and remove some of those outside the hashes throws and all that type of stuff because they don't want him making those throws in this offense because he can't.
Alabama, the Mac Jones.
Yeah, exactly. Make all the throws in our offense. And a lot of the times you need a Brian Dable, a Greg Roman to come in and say, these are the throws that he can make. These are the throws that we can win with and share in that offense. So I do think this decision making obviously super important in terms of statistics or advanced statistics and grades that PFF looks at when you're looking for quarterback play at the collegiate level, translating to the NFL. The biggest thing is clean pocket metrics. What you do from a clean pocket when you remove some of the variables like pressure and these types of things, out of pocket stuff, how efficient are you with the football? I look at yards per attempt. I look at average depth of target, clean pocket passing grade, turnover worthy play rate. And when you're looking at stable metrics, and I think this is an important conversation about stability in analytics, you're trying to find events that are stable with limited variables. It's why baseball has a lot of stable metrics because it's very limited in outcomes. With pressure, when you look at just a passing play, there are so many variables. What the play call was, the defense, the offensive line, was the receiver open? Did he drop it? There's these different things. If you can remove some of those variables to try and create a stickier situation, stickier in being stable, like clean pocket, that I think helps you. And clean pocket passing grade for the 2021 quarterback class, this is who the top four were. Zach Wilson in 2020, Mac Jones, Kyle Trask, and Trevor Lawrence. Four of the highest highly regarded quarterback prospects in this upcoming class, all ranked inside the top four in clean pocket passing grade this past year. A couple other metrics we'll look at to try and find some stability: standard drop back grade, avoid rollouts, avoid screens, and these different things. No play action grade, again, removing some of the scheme that allows for variables, allows for open receivers. Those are some of the stuff that's stable, both from college to the NFL, but also year over year at the collegiate level.
Did you throw in, I don't know, I wasn't really listening there, sorry, but
you're a disaster.
Did you throw in pressure to sack conversion rate? Because that's one of the biggest ones.
I do have that here, but I did not mention that.
So that one's one of the biggest ones to me. That's poise, and that is when you're under pressure, how often are you taking sacks?
Mm-hmm.
That's pressure sack conversion rate.
Yeah.
And I think, and that's another one that from college to pro, and it's kind of the Justin Fields stat of he was over 25%, over one quarter of pressure turned in sacks. Very high rate. You'll only see one or two quarterbacks a year over that in the NFL. And it's guys like Russell Wilson or Marcus Mariota was always over that. It's not a good, you'd rather not be at that.
And you see that are there ways to obviously move past? Like Deshaun Watson has a high sack to pressure conversion rate. Russell Wilson has a high sack to pressure conversion rate.
But it's not an NLB.
It's not a death knell, but it is something that is sticky. It is something that is stable. Like you have that tendency to convert pressure into sacks. You're going to see it. I mean, Dr. Eric Eager here, VP of Research and Development, wrote an entire article about how quarterbacks should take more ownership of their pressure rates and their sack rates than offensive lines in some cases. And I think you see that with Russell Wilson, Deshaun Watson, et cetera. Moving to the running back position, what are you looking for when you're scouting or evaluating running back talent?
First thing is just burst. Straight up, that is the most important trait for running back. And that's why vertical broad jump are more important than just 40 time, in my opinion, at the running back position. Because that is, from a standstill, how much are you moving? that gets you through holes. That gets you. That gets you.
I'm sorry.
That gets you running over linebackers. That is the most important trait for a running back. And then from there, elusiveness, contact balance, you call it, whatever you want to call it, the ability to take a hit and keep on chugging.
Gain yards above expectation is sometimes how I'll phrase it. Elusiveness, whatever, breaking tackle ability, yards after whatever it may be. So you have to, when in a situation to be tackled, avoid those things, whether that's completely making missed tackles, surviving contact better, all that type of stuff.
And those are the two biggest ones. And then the third one, because I think if you have those two, like, you can be productive. Now, receiving and whatever ability is kind of like an ancillary conversation altogether. But then I'd say the third biggest trait for just a pure running back is vision. But the kind of the tricky part about vision is that I don't think it's the same on every concept. Does not have the same sort of quote unquote vision. Like, a true outside zone run is going to ask you to read things differently than a gap power. Those are your not necessarily. Now, some guys just can't see a hole to save their lives, and it doesn't even matter, like a Trent Richardson. And some of those guys exist, and some people have incredible vision and are able to run whatever. So you can see easily, I feel like, on either end of the spectrum, but a lot of times it's a hairy situation. That one's far more difficult to evaluate, and that's why you kind of lean on the how explosive is the dude and how much can you break tackles, because those two things tend to be good starting points.
Yeah. I do think that I want to get into that ancillary conversation about, pass catching ability and ability to affect the passing game. Because a lot of times people bring up the number one thing is you got to be able to be you got to affect the passing game. You got to be this 3-down back that can survive on third downs. And I've had this conversation a handful of times on this podcast. One of the more overrated things is chasing this complete back, this guy that can do all 3 downs, because it's going to cost high draft capital. And oftentimes you're in a better situation when you're investing at the position with guys with different skill sets. Like, what, I think you have written here in your notes, what kind of back are you going to be? And I think that matters. Like, if you're going to be this complete back, one, it's going to be costly from a draft capital perspective, given how the NFL currently views those quote unquote complete backs, the Josh Jacobs, the Najee Harris, the Saquon Barkley types. If you're going to be that back, it's going to cost a lot, both on that second contract and in the draft. And two, are we not better off addressing the position and keeping guys fresh with multiple backs with multiple skill sets? Guys that can come in and be these pass-catching backs, these receiving backs, while others maybe have better vision, better elusiveness, etc.
Yeah, I think it's very important to state this, that the farther away you get from the football, spreading out from center to guard to tackle to tight end,
the
to
coaches,
quarterback,
the fans,
to running back, to wide receiver, the fans especially. Your role matters so much more. Offense, what you're asked to do, the kind of scheme you're in, matters so much more the farther away you get from the football. Your center, like a lot of centers, you're just centers, guards, tackles. You're a good center, guard, tackle. You pass protect, you fucking pass protect any offense in the NFL. I'm not sure it's going to matter. So, but if you're, again, to running back, what kind of back you're going to be? If you're in an offense that's just, pure, if you're in Kyle Shanahan's offense, you can be Raheem Mostert. You can be 195 pounds. If you're in, Raheem Mostert would get eaten alive if he ran the Steelers run scheme. He would not be able to survive in those same concepts. And so that's a very important thing to keep in mind. And I will say, I need this to become. I don't need shit, but this is how I need some more smelling salts. My 4 levels of receiving backs.
I love the 4th level, by the way. Can I say that? I'm reading it now. I love the 4th level.
Go for it.
No. Okay. You read it. I'm just teasing it.
So the top level of receiving back is you're capable of running wide receiver routes. Basically, if you were to play wide receiver, you would not look out of place. That is the Christian McCaffrey, Alvin Kamara level. I would throw in
Barkley?
No. Who was the guy from this past class that I always forget all the names immediately? Probably
Antonio Gibson?
Kenny Gainwell. I would throw him into that. You can run wide receiver routes and you're not going to look out of place. That's the top level. It's what depending on your offense, you can cover that super highly, or you can not give a shit about that. Level 3 is you can run angle routes, wheels, catch footballs, get open on those routes, and that will strike fear in linebackers. To me, that's the Aaron Jones, Saquon Barkley level of running back. Good level. That's
Tier 2.
I think that's about where, if I were putting together my ideal offense, I would probably not go any lower than those top 2 tiers. I would
Yeah.
want a guy that's going to compete in the pass
You
game.
have to be able to do one of those two things. You have to be in one of those tiers to feel that confident as a starting running back in the NFL.
Tier 2 is you can catch the football. You can use swings and screens. You can get the job done. That's Leonard Fournette.
Leonard Fournette can't catch the football. He has like some of the highest drop rates in the NFL.
He had like 60 catches that one. That's Mark Ingram.
Okay, Mark Ingram is a better
That's
decision.
that guy where it's Mark
Derrick
Ingram's-
Henry, I'd put in that tier. Like he can catch the football.
Yes, Mark Ingram. Those guys are not going to strike fear in a linebacker running, I don't know, any sort of downfield route. I just don't think so. Like that's not what they do. But you get them out in space, they can break a tackle on a linebacker, and that's the tier 2 of receiving back. And then here's the last tier. It's the toilet paper hands. It's the ball just slips right through. You get a bad wipe and you have a bad day. Devin Singletary in that tier. Jordan Howard in that tier. Where it's just like, if you're gonna feature them in any passing offense, like you want them to stay in a block. That's what you want.
Yeah. Fair.
No,
you can't. I mean, hands is we talk about catching the football at the receiver position. It's an expectation. But at the running back position, like you need to get there a little bit. There's some guys who literally can't catch the football. I remember talking about Travis Etienne of Clemson, where he first got to Clemson. Like he was working the jugs machine after practice every day because he was getting made fun of for his hands. And I think we've seen some clips in OTAs where he's dropped some balls, but still he's gotten a lot better there. And I think you need to improve your hands at the running back position. You need to be able to catch the football. It can't be in that tier 4. All right, I'm gonna jump to or get to some of the metrics here. A lot of it's just elusiveness. Forced missed tackles per attempt, yards after contact per attempt, forced missed tackles per reception. Those things that show that you're gaining those yards above expectation, that you're forcing missed tackles, breaking tackles, that matters. And that's a big reason why Devin Singletary is on the Bills and Zach Moss is on the Bills. They invest in that. They see the value in forcing missed tackles. Devin Singletary at FAU broke records, PFF records for forced missed tackles per attempt. You look at this past year, in forced missed tackles per attempt, number one back in this class, Javonte Williams. Shortly after that, Michael Carter. At 5th, Najee Harris. After that, Khalil Herbert, Travis Etienne. These backs that force missed tackles are oftentimes the backs that are coveted in that upcoming draft or moving into the draft class. Other things like that, yards after contact per attempt is very sticky from college year to college year or even college to the NFL. Some other backs there, Javonte Williams, Travis Etienne, all rank inside the top 6. Khalil Herbert as well. It's a big reason why we were higher on Herbert than maybe some others were, the back coming out of Virginia Tech. Shall we get to the wide receiver position?
Yes, we shall.
Kick us off, my friend.
Okay.
Kick us off.
Well, let's do it. Yeah, I do think the single biggest thing you look for, route running. Mm-hmm. And if not route running, the traits that make a good route runner. And the single biggest trait is suddenness. And it kind of goes back to kind of running backs where explosiveness, suddenness, somewhat similar, but it is the 3 cone. It is the can you cut and maintain your speed. If you can't, I don't give a shit who you are. I don't think you're going to be a good wide receiver. Like I know that you're just not going to. You better run a 4.3 flat. I don't know. You better have something else. But it goes back to suddenness at that position, and then suddenness with size is kind of the combo everyone's looking for. And that is, Allen Robinson. That's Devontae Adams. That's Michael Thomas. They don't run 4.4s. They are sudden as can be. Like they will run a 4.55 in a straight line and then at an angle without losing any sort of speed. And from there, that's the starting point. You need that to be a good wide receiver, to be a top flight wide receiver. After that, a lot of different body types I do think win. You don't necessarily have to be 6 foot 210. Like there are guys that are on the smaller side for the position. There's Stephon Diggs is 191, 182. You can be a little skinnier, still get the job done. You can be a little shorter, still get the job done. But I don't think you can. There's not a lot of. You have to have that suddenness to be a high end route runner. You don't necessarily have to be a high end route runner coming out, but the suddenness is getting off the line of scrimmage, getting in and out of your breaks.
I do think that, and that shows up with the receivers that you really like as well. When you're talking about receivers you really like in upcoming classes, you always bring up suddenness and that ability to separate. I think suddenness is very close to separation ability. When you look at, statistics that translate are very stable, receiving grade versus single coverage, separation percentage, these things where you have to show up. When you're going against single coverage or when you're trying to separate from players, you need to be sudden in and out of your breaks, sudden at the line of scrimmage. That is what creates that separation. That's what gets receivers open at the next level. People broaden it to route running, and route running, there's different ways to be a route runner. You don't need to be sudden sometimes to be an elite route runner. Sometimes you can be very polished or very smooth, but still that suddenness can oftentimes be a cheat code. You look at some of the highest graded receivers in single coverage this past year: Devontae Smith, Kadarius Toney, Elijah Moore, De'Ami Brown, these guys that are considered high-profile draft prospects. You won't see more sudden receivers probably than Elijah Moore. Elijah Moore, he was one of the most sudden receivers in this class. The only reason you didn't see it a ton against single coverage is because he played in the slot.
Devil's 3-cone.
The Devil's 3-cone. You love to see that. 3-cone shows up with suddenness, that change of direction, that movement skills, all that stuff.
Yeah, Mike Thomas has 6'9" 3-cone at 210 pounds. That's why Mike Thomas is Mike Thomas.
Yeah.
That's what it is. And I think from there, ball skills obviously are then the next biggest thing. Can you track a football? Can you make off frame catches? Do you have the body control to haul balls in? And that's when you get the CeeDee Lambs of the world, the Justin Jeffersons of the world, where it's like those guys, they're sudden, they get open. But then, when they're not necessarily open, they're still kind of open because those guys are adjusting to passes and hauling in whatever goes their way. And so those are kind of that's 1A, 1B, or probably 1 and 2, and then that is a big gap. That is what you need. You don't have to necessarily be super big, but I do think physicality and how strong you play
catch radius
does matter. But then I think that's also ball skills. It's like you play more physical when you know where the ball is going and you attack that football, which is, again, that's ball skills. So those are far and away, in my opinion, the two biggest things that I look for, that I covet in a wide receiver. The rest is kind of icing on the cake if you got the other things.
Talk more about kind of why maybe hands don't show up in that conversation. I think you've had discussions about hands and the instability of drop rate and these types of things. I think what my comment on it is, ball skills, that's where it shows up. Ball skills are obviously catching the football, going to get these off-platform catches. Also, not all drops are created equal. How you drop the football matters. If they are focus drops like Amari Cooper, it's different than if they're ball skills level drops like Noah Fant, where you're not approaching the football correctly.
Well, and that's why I think a lot of scouts, you talk about body catcher versus hands catcher. Hands catcher's tracking it well and attacking the football. Body catcher is doing it because they don't have the wherewithal,
the confidence
to go get it. And so you kind of fade body catchers because that is indicative of bad ball skills. Even if maybe you're a body catcher and don't have a lot of drops, you're just not going to get yourself in the position then when it is a contested situation or something like that. It might not even look like a drop. It may just go out as an incompletion, but you didn't track the ball well.
We've watched some receiver tape together, and a lot of times when you're kind of thinking out loud, something you'll point out is like, oh man, what a hands catch. What a hands catch. When you're sticking your hands out there and you see defenders also sticking their hands out there and you're securing those those are, I don't care if you have Amari Cooper drop rates. If you're doing that consistently, that's going to show up in the NFL. Those ball skills are going to show up in the NFL. I kind of already spoke to a lot of the metrics that translate. And I think it's reminiscent of what you brought up. Suddenness and ball skills show up in separation percentage, grade against single coverage. I think some of the best ball skills in the NFL right now are Justin Jefferson. You look back on his tape and some of these contested catches he's bringing down, where he's tracking the ball, catching things back shoulder, separating late at the catch point and stuff like that. That stuff matters, man. You saw that at LSU. You see that in the NFL now. The other stat I was going to bring up, and I don't think we even talked about really this type of receiver, but it's yards after catch per reception, especially when you control for average depth of reception. Obviously, some of the receptions closer to the line of scrimmage, you're going to see more opportunities for yards after the catch compared to a guy with an average depth of reception of like 12, 13 yards down the football field. And the number one receiver that comes up for that are two, A.J. Brown, Deebo Samuel. Those guys were monsters after the catch at the collegiate level, very high grading profiles after the catch. And then when they get to the NFL, you saw it. I remember I wrote a piece for The Athletic when we still had that partnership with The Athletic. And A.J. Brown, in those last 2 seasons at Ole Miss, gained at least 1 yard after the catch on the highest percentage of his receptions of any receiver in college football. And it's a lot of that is obviously his physicality, but also just like that ability to turn up field and force missed tackles. Like that translates in the NFL.
Yeah, so I think that kind of gets encapsulated in like suddenness. You have suddenness, you have size, you have that. you're going to break tackles.
Justin Jefferson had good yards after the catch ability too. Like I think his role in Minnesota, like he's not given as many opportunities, but still, like I still think like in the open field, like he can make some moves. He's a creative
Whereas
player.
if you have suddenness without size, it's going to be a little more difficult. Like Chris Olave is not broken a lot of tackles. Calvin Ridley is not breaking a lot of tackles, but they got suddenness, so they still productive as far as but you just got to know you're not throwing them screens and shit like that.
Exactly, and that's why Calvin Ridley's average depth of target is so far downfield. Like he's running deep comebacks and these deep posts and these types of things because that's how he creates separation. That's how he wins in the NFL. All right, before we jump to tight end and along the offensive line, got to give an update from our two sponsors here. In these uncertain times, life is full of questions. Like when should I start thinking about life insurance? But however difficult these questions may be, Western Southern can help you answer them. Backed by over 130 years of experience, together we can look ahead to leave the unknown behind. Western Southern Financial Group, life insurance, retirement, and investments. Speaking of investments, PFF has partnered with Symbol. That's SIMBULL, the stock market for sports that allows you to trade sports teams like stocks and earn cash payouts when your teams win. Symbol has blended sports and the stock market to offer you a way to invest in and profit off your favorite teams. The MLB is in full swing for the rest of summer, allowing you to earn daily cash payouts, and NFL free agency is still going on. So whoever lands the top of the market player will be sure to see their team's stock rise. Use promo code PFF and deposit $10 at symbol.app/PFF to earn a free PFF annual subscription. That's promo code PFF with a $10 deposit at symbol.app/PFF to earn a free annual subscription. We're on to the tight end position. This one's interesting. We have not had a very good tight end class in a while. Obviously, Kyle Pitts was insane, but still, from a depth perspective, we haven't seen a very good tight end class in a while.
Since what, 16?
Probably.
Jonnu, OJ Howard. Was that year? It was 16, 17, 18?
Potentially.
No, it was 17.
Gotcha.
All right.
What are you looking for at the tight end position?
So again, a lot of the same stuff that you kind of just went for wide receivers. You kind of reiterate for tight ends in terms of getting open, ball skills. But I think tight end, as maybe as much as any position in the NFL to me, has my opinion of what to really look for, what matters most has evolved in that like speed. Like I used to think, getting open, that route running ability is kind of like same as wide receivers. Like, but you need that to be a good tight end. I don't think so. I don't think so in the NFL anymore because you just look at the routes that are getting targeted in the tight position. You go watch
flats.
You go look at Robert Tonyan's 52 catches from a season ago. And there's probably fewer than 10 of them are him running an out route, a dig route, like a route that requires him to get open. It is him running an over route, cross route, a seam route, a flat route, or just like stick screen something. Those are not the route tree at tight end is not diverse. It is how athletic are you? How fast are you? Honestly, even more so than that in a lot of offenses in the NFL. And so I don't care how shifty you are as a route runner, how talented you are. If you run a 4.8, you're limited. You're not going to beat a linebacker across formation. And at that point, you're not open. You run a 4.4. I don't care if you can't turn. If you turn like a Mack truck, you'll get open on that crosser, and quarterback hits you, you'll gain yards where that other guy.
Gain yards after the catch, yeah.
The other guy wouldn't. So I think that's the biggest way my kind of evaluation of tight ends have evolved is that just pure speed, even without ball skills, even without the rest, is a weapon and can be useful at that position. But with the sort of caveat of, can you block? Can you be treated like a tight end, or are people going to treat you like a wide receiver? Can you inline block? Do you have the size? Do you have the want to? And then the technique, I think a lot of guys at tight end are coordinated enough at that point that you can get in the building and just be respected, which is really all you necessarily need for a lot of tight end in the NFL.
I would agree with you 100% about the speed. We've talked about, I think over the past 3 years that 3 or 4 years we've been working together, you talk a lot about speed at the tight end position, how much that can help you when you're trying to craft these offenses and run those very limited route trees. And I think the other thing too, and you brought up blocking, run block, positively graded run blocks, and that percentage that you look for that's one of the more stable metrics at tackle, guard, and center. Translate that to tight end, and you'll also see a lot of stability there. The number one tight end in 2020 in terms of positively graded run block percentage was Tommy Tremble. I don't know if you know who that is, Mike, but tight end of Notre Dame there, 99th percentile this past year. A guy that showed up as a blocker. A lot of people talked about Tremble as a blocker, and I think that athleticism too is important. I think, again, I'm going to bring it up just like I did with the receiver position. Yards after the catch, man. Yards after the catch per reception at the tight end position when you are running and not so diverse route tree. When your average depth of target is lower than outside receivers, you need to be able to pick up yards after the catch. That's what Kittle can do, Kelsey, Waller. Those are the 3 best tight ends in the NFL right now. Go gain yards after the catch. I think Pitts can do that as well. Like Pitts, in his usage, I don't know how deep his target depth will be now with Julio Jones gone, but still, if you're targeting him near the line of scrimmage, Pitts is going to gain yards after the catch. And that's what matters. That's not necessarily what Hawkinson is. I mean, you haven't seen Evan Ingram have that success in the NFL. Like, you need to see guys make plays after the catch.
I just found the best stat about Robert Tonyan. So I said 52 catches last year. 30 of them came off of play action. And every single target he only had 30 targets of play action. Caught all 30 of them because they are not.
Yeah.
Because he's wide open. Because he's schemed open.
Yeah.
They had nothing to do like those. So those are 30 targets that you, me, everyone listening at home would have also caught because they're not. You're not.
Not every single one. That was aggressive.
Okay.
But maybe still, I get what you're saying. Though. Like play action when you're running, when it's like cheap. It's cheap. It's schemed open receiving talent. I mean, schemed open receivers, and that's why you don't need your tight ends to be these elite route runners. You just need them to be fast and then catch the football. Ball skills also show up for tight ends as well. All right, offensive tackle here. We talk a ton about true pass sets, and that's the first thing you have listed here. That's one of the more stable stats we have here, and pressure percentage allowed on these true pass sets. Break down for the listeners what true pass sets are and how important they are.
Yeah, so it's basically just isolating when they can go one-on-one with a drop back passing concept, because play action, a lot of times, boot action, you're a frontside tackle on boot action, you're not even blocking anyone. You're selling if you're selling the run first and foremost, if a guy dips inside of you, you don't care. You're trying to sell the run. You're trying to get the linebackers out of position. You could not care less about the pass rush. So true pass sets are when you're dropping back, going one, basically the one-on-ones that you see at the Senior Bowl. That's what you want to isolate. You want to get the baseball analogy. You want the isolated incidents. That's one of them. And pass sets are a lot of different traits, obviously, go into making a successful tackle in terms of pass protection. Length, I feel similarly about length as arm strength, the quarterback position. It's cutoff. Are you 33 is where I would put kind of a realistic cutoff. There was one offensive tackle, Braden Smith, who actually was guard in college, who was starting last year consistently with sub 33-inch arms. It's not a lot.
He's good though, man. I like Braden Smith.
Yeah, you talked to Paul Alexander about arm length, and he just says he hates short arm tackles because a long-limbed and Alden Smith will win every time. You have no recourse a lot of times against the guys who do have that length if they know how to use it well. And so a lot of times you'll just get pooped on the whole game. So short arm tackles, he likes guys that can win that, like boxing, win that first contact battle. And so arm length to see is cut off. After that, it is feet are the biggest feet balance for OT, IOL, whatever. And it's not necessarily just testing metrics. It's how well do you actually move, kind of coordination. Can you
that's balance.
play defense in basketball? Balance, yeah. And balance, you can kind of, a proxy for balance is how often do you
fall?
Yeah. How often are you on the ground? You can't block on the ground. It's difficult. Sometimes you can, but it's become
you can hold on the ground.
Now. Yeah. So balance is that. And then after that, a technique and consistency of that, obviously big. That can come in time. But then how well do you use your hands? So balance, how well do you use your hands? Hand placement, proxy for that is how often do you let a defensive lineman into your shoulder pads? And that's something that Paul Alexander said he will track on guys. Like, how often are they letting an opposing defensive lineman get into the shoulder pads? Because if they have their hands in your shoulder pads, they're controlling the interaction. They're controlling what you're doing. And if it's vice versa, you're controlling what they're doing. So can you avoid that? Even if maybe, you go to a small school offensive tackle, they're not always going to be there. You don't expect them to be super consistent with their technique. They're getting the coaching, they're not getting the refinement to that, say, a guy like Liam Eichenberg at Notre Dame would, where they have some of the best offensive line coaching in the country, or Alabama. It's not going to be the same, but you could still, they still know what they're trying to do, and so they're not trying to let a defender in their pads. And are they getting the job done? They probably use the hands well.
I mean, you spoke to a lot of statistics that are stable. I mean, pass grade on true pass sets. You look at this past year, number 1, Elijah Vera Tucker. Number 2, Liam Eichenberg. Number 4, Sam Cosmi. Shortly down the list, Stone Forsythe. I think another thing, too, is that positively graded run blocking percentage. If you are going to look at run blocking, how often are you positively affecting that, winning those run blocks? Brady Christensen 1, Christian Darrisaw 2, Darian Kennard, who we're going to talk about in the 2022 NFL draft there at 4, Alex Leatherwood shortly down the list. Like these are the statistics that translate to the next level. I think we've talked a ton about our trench grading, defensive line and offensive line, because we're given so many opportunities to grade wins and losses, that binary yes, no, win, loss. You see a lot of stable metrics there, especially when you siphon it down to true pass sets and those types of things. I do think that I have a lot of confidence in PFF's pressure percentage allowed, pass blocking grade allowed, or pass blocking grade on those true pass sets to see that translate in the NFL. Mm-hmm. And while so some of the times we'll have conversations about like, man, he's grading really well and his pass sets still aren't good and his hand usage can get better. That's like similar to where on the pass rushing side, you see high pass rush grades like Adam Anderson, and he's still got a lot of room to grow. That's going to be, obviously players that PFF are going to be higher on.
Yeah, and so then from there, so I said balance 1, probably hands 2. Explosiveness, power is kind of that third. You don't have to be, Mekhi Becton to be a top tier offensive tackle. Like David Bakhtiari looks like he's playing a different game altogether. But he's exceptional because he has balance, feet, agility, and hands for days. Now, explosiveness, it just kind of takes you to that next level when you are Tristan Wirfs, when you don't fear the bull rush. That really gets you there.
Anchor and sit like that too. Like I think weight matters. I think being big can help. I mean, and that I think matters is an interesting way of phrasing it. But I do think like you talk about like icing on the cake and stuff like that, like having the appropriate weight, having the arm length, having the explosiveness. These are things that like make it easier to be great.
Yeah, but I don't think you get away and you become a good tackle without the first things I said, without the feet / balance and hands.
Very true.
Those are just like, you need that. And then after that, explosiveness can take you to that next level. And I will say kind of the difference between interior offensive line, offensive tackle, obviously length, not as big a deal. I don't think pure quicks nearly as big a deal at interior offensive line. I don't even think like explosiveness is as big a deal. Like upper body strength's more important there, hands more important there. And then obviously I'd say hands and balance the most important there. You're so much more, you're playing through a lot more trash in the interior. Mm-hmm. You're getting bumped, you're passing off stunts, you're getting tripped over by the guy behind you. Can you stay on your feet? I think that's far more important on the interior, something you look for far more than just actual foot speed is not going to win you as many battles as the actual balance aspect there.
I think that's a really good point. And we can, anything else you want to touch on in interior, that's the last position we have here. I know you bring up balance, but anything else that stand out as opposed like differences between obviously offensive tackle and on the interior, balance being super important. I remember you talked that a ton about Jonah Jackson. Like, oh man, this guy has a ton of balance. He's never fallen over. He's always stable. He's always got it done. He's always staying on his feet and those types of things. But what else do you look for along the interior offensive line? Because a lot of stable metrics are the same. Positive graded run block percentage, passing grade on true pass blocking grade on true pass sets. What other things or traits are you looking for on interior?
Like I said, arm length, not as big a deal, but it's still nice.
Always is.
Yeah. And then like explosiveness, not nearly as important as just strength. Like you don't need to be able to fire out of your stance and necessarily climb to the second level the fastest, but you do have to be able to anchor against DTs because you're going to face far more bull rushes. So you'll see weights of guards and centers going to be on the higher, or at least guards, higher than even tackles. Like that's a 330, 340 guard that's where you're looking for at the guard position.
That's going to do it, man. Things to scout, things to evaluate for all offensive positions. Going to do defensive positions next week. This has been fun, man. I think it's interesting to kind of open up about the process and look at it. I think another thing we talked about too, maybe down the road or on a mailbag or something, is a lot of people ask me about, what's exactly your process for watching film, by position. How do you approach it? When do you do it? That type of stuff. I went to a long-winded answer on like by month what you're looking at and that type of stuff, but still.
What?
A lot of it, like in terms of like, when are you watching
by
NFL?
His sign? Is he a Libra?
That's true. I do think I watch them in order of horoscope, which I think helps me a lot. It helps me a lot because then you can like, okay, this guy's not grading super well, but he is.
But Mars is in retrograde. So
yeah, true, very true. All right, well, without further ado, let's go ahead and jump now to the interview with University of Arizona head coach Jedd Fisch. Now joining the 2-for-1 Drafts podcast is current Arizona coach Jedd Fisch. Really appreciate you jumping on the show, man.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate being here.
Where I'd like to start, and I think you see this in a lot of the interviews that you've had so far, a lot of people say you're this former coach or current former coach Frankenstein and the coaches that you've worked with. Obviously started as a GA with Steve Spurrier there at Florida and then have worked under Harbaugh, Belichick, McVay. Can we start with Spurrier and just the relationship you have with him and the impact he's had on you as a coach and as a person, I'm sure has been massive.
Yeah, I mean, obviously he's the guy that got me into this profession. He's the guy that I've always looked up to in this profession. I was just with him this past weekend, actually, at a golf tournament in Pebble Beach. And
nice.
Just to be able to spend any time with him at all, the first thing I said to my wife is, you need to call Miss Jerry and you need to find out from Jerry how to be the best coach's wife in the world, because she is that. And my wife has done a great job of being that as well. And I've just always, everything about Coach Spurrier, the way he runs his program, the way he calls offensive plays, the way he talks with his players, the energy that he brought every day at practice. I mean, all of it was just so good to be around that he's meant the world to me in this profession, and nothing's changed.
You've bounced around in the NFL a ton, have a ton of NFL coaching experience, worked under a lot of big names. And I know it'd be tough to bring in any one philosophy or any one principle that you've got from that experience. But what are some of the themes through the places that you've been with the Jacksonville Jaguars, the Rams, working under Belichick, McVay, a lot of really good coaches, a lot of really good players? What are some of the themes from your NFL experience that you want to take to Arizona?
Well, the central theme of our program is competition. And when you're around any of those great coaches, whether that be Coach Carroll, Coach Belichick, Coach McVay, Coach Billick, Coach Shanahan, it really doesn't matter which one of the ones you want to name that have all won championships at different levels. They are all the greatest competitors. They're all guys that go into every fight and you want them on your team. There's guys that go into every game and you want them competing and battling with you. Those guys are just tremendous competitors, whether you're playing basketball with Coach Carroll or golf with Coach Spurrier or golf with Coach Belichick or just literally just sitting around a room. There's just this personality and this ability to compete that is so good. And we try to really talk about that, harp on that, and discuss that in our program all the time.
I know there's a quarterback competition going down at the University of Arizona right now. I would love to get an update on that. But before we do, another quarterback that you worked closely with this past year, Cam Newton of the New England Patriots, now returning as the New England Patriots starter. They did draft Mac Jones, but Cam Newton slated there to start. Battled a ton of injuries, battled COVID-19, learned the playbook. That is a very complex playbook. Obviously did not have the season maybe some expected from Newton in 2020. What are your expectations entering year two, having worked so closely with him in 2020?
Yeah, I mean, I expect that anybody that plays with the Patriots are going to be at the very highest level. The coaching staff over there is tremendous. The system is tried and true. And anybody that has the opportunity to work there, play there, or be a part of that special program recognizes and understands that it's very hard not to have success there. And I expect all of them to have it. And I wish them all the best. And I'm very good friends with many of them.
So I know right now it's a competition between Gunnar Cruz and Will Plummer there at the University of Arizona. You also had a transfer from USF, Jordan McLeod, all competing. Like you said, competition being so important at the University of Arizona for that starting quarterback spot. You just recently finished, I think, a spring game a couple weeks back. And something that you've said in a handful of interviews, the two most important things at the quarterback position, decision-making and the ability to make all the throws. Of the three quarterbacks so far, who do you think has shown that the most? And who do you think is in the best position to potentially take that number one spot week one?
Well, Austin, Jordan just got here 2 days ago, so I haven't had the chance to be on the field with him and see what type of decision maker he is in our system. I certainly have had the opportunity to see what he does at USF, and he has the most starting experience and most playing experience and game experience. He ended his final game at USF throwing 5 touchdown passes and over 400 yards. So I know that he knows how to make good decisions with the football. I know how he moves the football. Gunnar and Will went at it head-to-head every single day. They battled it out. One day, one guy got the starting reps. The next day, the next guy did. They rotated periods. They rotated plays. Really just about everything. We put them in as hard of a situation as you could put a group of guys or 2 guys in. One guy made a mistake, next guy was in. One guy made a mistake, next guy wasn't in. they kind of never knew what was happening. They didn't know exactly what our rhyme or reasoning or plan was when it comes to that competition. But for us, we wanted to make sure that they were able to handle all the adversity that comes their way as a quarterback. And I really am excited about having 3 guys roll the ball out on August 5th or August 6th and let those guys just compete their tails off, man. And we're going to have long practices that are going to have 2 different groups going at a time, because we need to see as much as we can see when it comes to who's going to be our starting quarterback against BYU, and then who's going to remain our starting quarterback all season long.
Should be an exciting watch as all those guys duke it out. I know what you've done also in that spring game. You had Teddy Bruschi, Rob Gronkowski, I think, jump from a helicopter down to the field. You're doing a lot with alumni from the University of Arizona, trying to have that culture, that positive change at this program. Speak more to what you're trying to do, that type of culture, that type of energy you're trying to bring to the University of Arizona in your first year there as the head coach.
Yeah, well, I mean, every part of building a college program is about recognizing what's come before you. And your alma mater, everyone's alma mater is we're so prideful of where we went to college. And we're so prideful of what the university stood for that we went to. So when you have a chance to go coach at somebody else's university, like what I'm doing now, is that I've got to do an incredible job of recognizing the people that have come before us and then honoring them. Now, we're fortunate that we have guys like Rob Gronkowski and Teddy Bruschi, 2 of the best that's ever done it, be able to be a part of our spring game. We also have the opportunity to have Ricky Hundley and Chuck Cecil on our coaching staff, 2 guys that are in the College Football Hall of Fame, 2 guys that are on the Wall of Honor, or the Ring of Honor here at the University of Arizona, and they're coaching our defensive line and they're coaching our safeties. And to be able to have guys like that around our players and be surrounding with some of the great Desert Swarm stories and before, and some of the things that Larry Smith and Dick Tomey did, it's a great privilege and a great honor to recognize them and be able to host an alumni weekend of over 250 alumni that weekend.
Something that I love that you've spoke to kind of all throughout this first offseason with the University of Arizona, when people ask you about your goals, is we want to be the toughest on everybody's schedule. We want to be the toughest team on every single person's schedule, the hardest out. And I think that's obviously easier said than done. What changes in practice? What changes in meetings? What changes in film study to be a tough out, to be a hard out, despite, obviously expectations being different there at the University of Arizona? How do you become that tough competition game in, game out?
Yeah, Austin, I would say this. We have got to be mentally and physically tough in practice, in meetings, in every decision we make. If we're going to be what we want to be, and that hard out, that number on your schedule where nobody wants to come to or no one wants to play, it's going to come down to, are we willing to do what's maybe not the easiest because it's the best? Are we willing to sacrifice, let's call it maybe going out one night? Or are we willing to sacrifice playing video games for more film, more meeting time, more runs or sprints early in the morning when nobody's watching? We tell our guys, it's what you do when no one's watching, which is really what defines your character. So our whole goal is to be able to continuously attack every day, continuously make one day better than that. And we grade them every single day, and we let them know, did we win or did we lose that day? And if we could kind of build that culture of toughness and build that culture of competitiveness, then I believe we could get to that spot where no one wants to play us. And that's our goal.
Going to shift a little bit more looking towards the 2021 season. I want to talk about offensively, specifically from a schematic standpoint. What are your expectations for this offense? You've obviously had stints as an offense coordinator in the NFL. You also have Brandon Carroll on staff. What schematic elements do you want to bring to this Arizona offense that maybe have differed from the past? I know that might change with the quarterback and who wins that job, but what are some of the principles you're bringing offensively with Brandon Carroll and yourself?
Well, unfortunately, we have a really good coaching staff. With Jimmy Doherty as a pass game coordinator, came from UCLA. Brandon, who came from Seattle. I've coached with both of them at numerous spots. Been fortunate enough to call plays for 10 years in college and pro football. And my goal is for us collectively to put together the best possible system that will enable us to be able to give an illusion of complexity, but keep it simple. And we want to make sure that we're able to be in different formation groups. We want to be able to be in different personnel We want to be able to use motion and shifts to our advantage, and then be able to play like teams play on Sundays. I've worked for Mike Shanahan. I've worked for Sean McVay. I'm very close with Kyle Shanahan, who runs Mike's system. And if you look at the offense that I'm most familiar with, it's the offense that's being run right now with Joe Burrow in Cincinnati, with Zach Wilson at the Jets, with Garoppolo at the Niners, with now Matthew Stafford at the Rams. And you start with Aaron Rodgers at the Packers. And, that's where we all came from. We all came from the same coaching tree, and hopefully we'll be able to be successful like those guys were.
A few more players I want to bring up before I let you go. Really appreciate the time. I want to talk a little bit about Michael Wiley. Only a little over 300 rushing yards in his Arizona career, a former 3-star back out of Houston, a guy that has graded really well in PFF system, forced a ton of missed tackles. What are your expectations for him specifically entering this upcoming season?
I'm hoping that he's able to continue to force a ton of missed tackles and continue to build off of some of the successes he's had as a runner. He hasn't carried the ball too much. We have a pretty good running back room. I think we've got some guys, Jalen John and Stevie Rocker and Sean Butler, that are all going to compete with Michael. We've got really a pretty good group there, 5 or 6 guys in the running back room that, again, we're in the middle of a competition, and not one person has really said that they're the starting running back. We brought Drake Anderson in from Northwestern, who is the leading rusher at Northwestern. So to be able to get Drake with Michael, with Stevie, who's a true freshman, with Jalen, I mean, we got a pretty good group right there that's really able to compete. And let's see what these guys can do when they start toting the rock 25, 30 times a game.
Competition at every single position. Last one here for you, Coach. Jamari Joyner, a guy who was a former quarterback turned receiver, had over 550 yards, I think, as a true freshman, I think, in 2019. Are you expecting Joyner to come back here in 2020 and have a significant role in this offense with the rest of these guys?
Yeah, Jamari got a little banged up at the spring game, so we'll see how he gets to rehab this whole summer. We've got an amazing group. In my mind, our wide receiver group is very well-rounded, very competitive. We've got guys like Stanley Berryhill, who came back, talking about transfer, wound up not transferring. BJ Castile, same thing. We've got the ability to get Jalen Johnson with us, Jamari, to be able to get Jamari going when we expect to get him going. Tavion Cunningham, who ran track for the University of Arizona. So you've got 5, 6, 7 guys that I believe can go out there, and we got to figure out who are the 3 that are going to play every down. But these guys are all battling it out, and they're going to have to see in the weight room and see where they all work themselves out in these player run practices to be able to get out there in training camp and make a big difference.
Absolutely. Really appreciate the time, Coach. Best of luck this upcoming season.
Yeah, thanks, Austin. Take care, buddy.
The Fish, man, he's got some tough sledding ahead. I mean, we talked a lot about the current talent on the Arizona coaching staff, or Arizona football team, but when the conversation starts with a 3-person quarterback competition, it's going to be difficult to compete in the Pac-12. Like, the biggest thing for him is getting tougher, recruiting better, bringing talent to Arizona, leveraging some of the alumni like he is with Teddy Bruschi and Rob Gronkowski being involved in the spring game and that type of stuff. Like, he has to change wholesale the culture at Arizona, how they recruit at Arizona, and try and bring some talent to Tucson, because this is a team that is right now devoid of talent, as kind of evidenced by how much competition. So he brings up so much on that interview about competition, and this is what we preach. We preach at Arizona competition. Well, he's got competition at every position. Running back still unclear, quarterback still unclear, who's gonna be the top receiver still unclear. Like, he is working through so much of this right now because, again, that team has not had like high end contributing talent for quite some time. And I think the culture he's bringing and his approach to recruiting and the energy he's had, obviously the experience he's had in the NFL, should translate to better talent there at Arizona, but it's going to take some time.
What's the saying? So if you have 2 quarterbacks, you don't have one. If you have 3 quarterbacks,
you have half.
How many do you have?
I don't know how many.
Going negative.
I think you have negative. Honestly.
You have I.
Yeah. So they obviously have Gunnar Cruz there, Will Plummer, who are currently rooming together and competing for the starting quarterback job at University of Arizona. And then they had that transfer, Jordan McLeod, come from University of South Florida to come and compete as well. He's been there for only a couple days, but still, it'll be interesting. University of Arizona will be interesting this upcoming year. He's got the road ahead of him. It's going to be tough, but I'm excited to see how Jedd Fisch plays out in Arizona. Until next time, that's going to do it. Make sure you rate, review, and subscribe to the podcast. Leave a comment, leave a 5-star review. We'd love to see that. Also, subscribe to the YouTube channel. We will be back next week. Wednesday. We're dropping these every night on Wednesday, and then we'll get to the 2 episodes per week with the rebrand come July 19th. Super excited for that. Producer Quinn, producer Dave, producer Max, Austin Gayle, Mike Renner, 2 for 1 drafts.